In the dim corridors of the Claw District, night always fell slower than usual, as if the city held its breath before spilling chaos once more. The metallic scent of the wind mixed with the coming rain, carrying whispers of hunters roaming the streets. Here, every shadow could be an enemy, and every step held a story that was never meant to be told. As neon lights flickered unsteadily, the city seemed to signal that something sinister was stirring beneath its surface. Cairo, a former Syndicate executor, walked slowly, his black coat swaying with the rhythm of his trained movements. His feline eyes scanned the surroundings with instinctive caution. He had stayed away from this world for too long. But the news of his missing younger sibling forced him back. He understood the risks, yet blood ties remained. The most dangerous reason for a killer to return to the shadows. Old buildings on either side reflected memories he wished he had buried. Torture, betrayal, bloody missions, fragments of a past that clung to him like a stain that refused to fade. Now this dark path led him back to the heart of the problem he once left behind. In silence, it felt as though the city welcomed him with a mocking grin. In the midst of the stillness, soft footsteps echoed behind him. Cairo halted without turning, his ears twitching to follow the rhythm. Someone was tailing him. Not an amateur, not a street thief. This was Syndicate style. Observe before striking. The old adrenaline surged through him again, like the poison that once kept him alive, but nearly killed him. When the shadow emerged from the fog, Cairo immediately recognized the symbol on the attacker's chest. A silver claw with 3 hollow marks, the emblem of the Shadow Hunter Division, one of the most lethal units in the Syndicate. His body tensed, not from fear, but because such a mark appeared only when the target was deemed a major threat. And the fact that he had become the target meant only one thing. Someone at the top wanted him erased. The first attack came fast, a blade slicing past his ear. Cairo leapt aside, metal claws extending from his gloves in an instant. The clash of weapons rang out like a death knell dancing in the night. Though he had long abandoned this life, his muscles still remembered how to kill without sound and survive without hesitation. After a brief struggle, the attacker fled, leaving behind a message on the wall. 3 horizontal slashes dripping dark red liquid. It wasn't a threat. It was an invitation. Cairo exhaled heavily. The Syndicate wanted him to come to them, and they knew he had no other choice. If he wanted to find his sibling, he had to enter the Tiger's Den. He headed to an old bar at the corner of the district, a gathering place for informants. Thick cigarette smoke veiled the lights, creating an atmosphere suspended between reality and nightmare. Patrons eyed him with a mixture of curiosity and fear. Cairo's name still lived among the dark legends that never fully died. At the far back table, a skinny informant with a long mustache awaited him. The man's eyes darted nervously as if fearing his own shadow. He knew the consequences of speaking about the Syndicate, especially to someone who once served as part of its killing machine. But money and fear often walked hand in hand toward truth. "Your sibling is still alive," the informant whispered, his hands trembling. "But they've been taken to an underground facility, one only the core members know how to enter." The words stabbed deeper into Cairo's heart than any blade. His sibling, the only reason he ever tried to live a normal life, was now trapped in the Syndicate's dark game. Cairo gripped the table, leaving claw marks that split the wood. He wasn't angry at the informant, but at himself. He knew his life always brought danger, and now that danger had reached the person he protected most, this was no longer about revenge, it was about redeeming the failures he had long ignored. With this new information, Cairo stepped out into the cold night. The streets grew quieter, yet danger felt closer. He sensed eyes watching from every corner, as though the Syndicate monitored his every move. But Cairo wasn't just any hunter. He knew how to navigate the shadow world better than anyone. Before he could go further, a small explosion shook the street. A black drone crashed before him, projecting a holographic message from a masked figure. "Cairo, return to where you belong. The underworld longs for you," the voice echoed, cold and familiar. The voice of the Syndicate's new leader, once his comrade. Cairo clenched his fists, realizing that the further he advanced, the more his past demanded resolution. But he was someone who always finished what he started. Even if he had to face the entire Syndicate alone, he would do it. Not for honor, but for the family stolen from him. He moved toward the industrial district, where the underground facility was rumored to be. Massive pipes spewed hot steam, forming a thick curtain that obscured everything. Cairo moved silently, his body merging with the darkness. The killer instinct he despised had become his sharpest weapon once more. Every step calculated, every breath controlled. At the giant steel gate, 2 heavily armed guards stood watch. Charging from the front wasn't an option. so he climbed the side wall like a living shadow. With swift precision, he disabled one guard and knocked the other unconscious before he could scream. The facility's entrance was now open, but the true danger had only just begun. Inside, long corridors glowed with blinking red lights, as if the building itself pulsed. The hum of heavy machinery merged with the rattle of chains from unknown places. This was the Syndicate's dark laboratory, the training and experimentation ground for the next generation of hunters. Cairo's anger simmered, seeing symbols he once wore proudly. The deeper he went, the stronger the scent of metal and blood became. In a large glass room, he found experimental records showing that his sibling was used as a subject for physiological enhancement. The Syndicate aimed to create Cairo's successor, faster, stronger, more loyal. His heart broke, but his resolve hardened. Just before reaching the final chamber, the steel door opened and a figure in a long coat appeared. The sharp eyes of the new Syndicate leader gazed at Cairo in triumph. "In the end, everything returns to its origin," he said. "You are our legend, and your sibling will become our future." The words ignited every flame of fury in Cairo's being. Without hesitation, Cairo stepped forward, into the room where everything would be decided. Their shadows stretched across the cold floor, ready to collide in a long-destined battle. The night in the Claw District held its breath again, aware that blood would fall and the coming storm could not be stopped. The core chamber of the facility was filled with swirling red light, like rage given form. Cairo stood face to face with the new Syndicate leader, a tall figure in a long coat and a metal-layered mask. The air between them felt heavy, burdened with history left unresolved. This was no longer a duel between hunter and target, but a clash of two paths demanding retribution. The leader slowly removed his mask, revealing a face Cairo once knew, Rios, the former comrade who had vanished during a mission. Rios's eyes now reflected a dark ambition, as though he had surrendered all humanity for power. "You didn't return just for your sibling," he said quietly. "You returned because you could never truly leave these shadows behind." Cairo raised his metal claws, their scraping echoing through the room. "I came back because you took something that wasn't yours," he replied, his voice as sharp as the blades he carried. His heartbeat synced with the flicker of red lights, pumping resolve he had long buried. There was no room for doubt. This dark world had to be destroyed at its roots. Rios moved first, lunging with near-invisible speed. His body had clearly been enhanced through the same experiments inflicted on Cairo's sibling. The first impact shook the chamber, cracking glass and triggering howling alarms. Cairo was thrown back several steps, but he rose again, enduring the pain as if it were familiar choreography. The fight became a storm of shadows. Claws clashed against an energy blade, sparks scattering like stars forced into existence only to die moments later. Every strike Rios delivered carried unnatural strength, but every movement Cairo made was forged from hundreds of lethal missions. They battled like two sides of a mirror, finally shattering. In the midst of the duel, Cairo spotted a large control panel marked with the highest security clearance. He knew his sibling was behind the steel door connected to the experimental machinery. His focus split between survival and saving the only family he had left. Rios noticed, and attacked even more relentlessly, as if forcing Cairo to choose between duty and blood. When Rios unleashed a vertical strike capable of cleaving steel, Cairo twisted and blocked with all his strength. Without wasting a heartbeat, he kicked Rios toward an electrical console, sending a burst of sparks into the air. Rios jolted, but instead of weakening, he laughed. "You forget, Cairo. I was built to surpass you." With a sudden motion, Rios activated the emergency system, lowering 4 automated defense turrets from the ceiling. The weapons locked onto Cairo without mercy, firing energy rounds that sliced through the air like whips of light. Cairo ran, leapt, spun between the shots, his old instincts guiding each movement with deadly precision. He sprang onto the wall, using the momentum to strike one turret and destroy it with a single slash. Metal shards exploded outward, but the remaining turrets quickly recalibrated. Rios advanced with his blade again, forcing Cairo to fight while dodging a relentless barrage. The chamber had turned into a shifting maze of death. When an energy round nearly struck his chest, Cairo ducked and used a surviving turret as temporary cover. A small explosion erupted as Rios's attack hit the machinery, creating a brief opening. With razor reflexes, Cairo lunged and drove his metal claws into Rios's shoulder. Thick black blood oozed from the wound. Rios growled, merging anger and pain into renewed strength. He struck Cairo hard, sending him crashing into a wall, cracks spiderwebbing across its surface. Cairo gasped, but his gaze sharpened. He knew one thing: To win, he couldn't merely endure. He had to fight with everything. He was, including the darkness he'd
Ia menutup
tried to
matanya
leave
sesaat,
behind. He
membiarkan
closed his
naluri
eyes for a
pembunuh
moment,
yang selama ini
letting the
ia
suppressed
tekan
killer
muncul
instinct
kembali.
rise
Ketika
once
ia
more.
membuka mata,
When he opened
pupilnya
them,
menyempit
his
seperti
pupils had
predator
narrowed
yang
like
siap
those of a
memburu.
predator
Tubuhnya
ready to
bergerak
hunt.
lebih rendah,
His body
lebih cepat,
lowered
lebih
faster,
diam.
quieter.
Rios menyadari
Rios
perubahan
recognized
itu.
the change
Terlambat,
too late.
Cairo hilang dari
Cairo
pandangannya seperti
vanished from
kabut yang
sight like
robek oleh
fog
angin.
torn apart by
Dalam
the
sepersekian
wind.
detik
In the
berikutnya,
next fraction of a
Cairo
second,
muncul tepat di
Cairo
belakangnya
appeared
dan
behind him and
menghantam.
struck.
Tulang rusuk Rios
Rios'
dengan
ribs with
kekuatannya
enough
mampu
force to rattle the
mengguncang
chamber's
struktur
metal
lubang.
framework.
Rios
Rios
terbatuk darah
coughed dark
gelap,
blood,
terkejut
stunned
melihat
by how
betapa cepat
quickly
gaya
Cairo's
bertarung
old
lama
fighting
Cairo
style
kembali
reclaimed the
menguasai ruangan.
battlefield.
Kau
You
seharusnya
should
sudah
have
mati,
been dead,
katanya sambil
he
tersenyum
muttered with a
kecil.
bitter
Kau
smile.
terlalu berharap,
You expected
jawab
too
Cairo.
much, Cairo
Ia menendang
replied.
Rios ke
He
lantai,
kicked Rios to
lalu
the
melesat
floor and
menuju
sprinted
panel
toward the control
Tangan
panel.
gemetar namun
His
pasti
trembling
menekan
but
kode.
determined.
Override yang
Hands
pernah
entered
ia
the
pelajari
override code he
saat
once
masih menjadi anggota
learned as a
inti.
core member.
Alarm berubah
Alarm
warna,
shifted
pintu
in
baja perlahan
tone,
terbuka,
and the steel door
memperlihatkan
slowly
sosok
opened,
adiknya,
revealing his
terbaring
sibling
dengan
lying
kabel dan alat medis,
unconscious, covered in
menempel pada
cables and
tubuhnya.
medical
Sebelum
devices.
Cairo sempat
Before
mendekat,
Cairo could
Rios
reach them,
bangkit kembali,
Rios rose
memaksa
again,
tubuhnya
forcing his
yang
battered
rusak
body
untuk
to
bergerak.
move.
Ia
He lifted his
mengangkat
blade
pedangnya
for one
untuk
final
terakhir kalinya.
strike, the
Cahaya
red glow
merah
reflecting the
mencerminkan
madness
kegilaan yang
that had
telah memakan
consumed him.
moralnya.
If
Jika
I
aku tak
can't
bisa
build the
membangun masa
Syndicate's
depan
future from
Syndicate dari
you,
dirimu,
then from
maka
your
dari
sibling,
adikmu,
he
ucapnya dengan
snarled.
suara pecah.
Cairo turned,
Cairo
the world
berbalik, dunia
seeming to
seolah
slow.
menolak.
Every
Setiap
instinct
insting dalam
screamed at
dirinya
him to
berteriak
move,
untuk
and
bergerak,
he dashed
dan ia
forward
melesat dengan
with a speed
kecepatan
that
yang
even
bahkan
shocked.
mengagetkan
Rios, the
Rios.
two
Dua
shadows,
bayangan itu
collided in a
bertabrakan
decisive
dalam
clash,
serangan penentu.
claws and blade
Cakar
meeting
dan
in a
pedang
blinding
beradu dalam
flare.
kilatan terang
When the
yang
silence
menyilaukan.
settled,
Dalam
only one
keheningan
figure
setelahnya,
remained
hanya
standing.
satu sosok yang masih
Rios fell
berdiri.
to his knees,
Rios
his
jatuh
blade
berlutut,
slipping
pedangnya
from his
terlepas dari
grasp.
genggaman.
You
Kau
were
selalu
always
lebih kuat
stronger
dari
than I
yang aku kira,
believed, he
katanya
whispered
sebelum
before
tubuhnya
collapsing
tumbang
entirely.
sepenuhnya.
Cairo held his
memegang
bloodied
cakar yang
claws,
berdarah.
breathing heavily,
Napasnya berat,
his
namun
eyes fixed on
matanya
the room
tetap
where his
tertuju
sibling
pada
waited.
pintu tempat
There was no
adiknya
triumph in
berada.
his expression,
Tidak ada kemenangan
only
di
deep
wajahnya,
exhaustion
hanya
wrapped in
kelelahan
fragile
mendalam di
hope.
balut harapan
Cairo
tipis.
entered the room
Cairo
slowly,
masuk perlahan ke
approaching
ruangan,
his unconscious
mendekati
sibling.
adiknya yang
He
terbaring
carefully
tak
removed the
sadarkan diri.
cables and held
Ia
their weak
melepaskan
body
kabel-kabel
close.
itu
For
dengan
the first
hati-hati,
time in years, the
memeluk
machine-filled
tubuh lemah sang
chamber
adik.
felt warm.
Untuk pertama
The war
kalinya
wasn't
setelah
over,
bertahun-tahun,
but one shadow
ruangan
in
yang
his
penuh
life had
mesin
finally
dingin itu
found
terasa
its
hangat.
light.
Meski
As the
perang belum
facility
sepenuhnya
alarms
selesai,
blared,
satu bagian
signaling a
gelap
failing
hidupnya akhirnya
reactor,
menemukan cahaya.
Cairo lifted his
Ketika alarm
sibling and
gedung
prepared to
berbunyi
leave.
menandakan reaktor
Fire
yang
crawled
rusak,
along the
Cairo
corridors,
mengangkat
but his
adiknya dan
stride
bersiap
remained
pergi.
steady.
Api
The
mulai
night in the
merayap
Claw
di sepanjang
District no
lorong,
longer held
namun
its breath.
langkahnya tetap
It
patah.
exhaled with
Malam di
relief,
Claw District
as
kini
if the
tidak
city
lagi
knew
menahan
the
napas.
lost
Ia
legend had
melepaskannya
returned,
dengan
carrying
lega.
new hope.
Seolah kota pun
Outside
tahu
the
bahwa
facility,
legenda yang
the
hilang
night
telah
wind
kembali
brushed
membawa
against his
harapan baru.
face.
Di
Cairo
luar
looked up at the
fasilitas,
dark
angin malam
sky,
menyapu wajahnya.
illuminated by the
Cairo
growing
menatap langit
flames
gelap
behind
yang
him.
perlahan
He didn't
cerah
know
oleh
what awaited
kilatan
ahead,
kebakaran di
but
belakangnya.
for the first
Ia
time,
tidak
the
tahu
past
apa
no
yang
longer
menunggu di
chained
depan.
him. He
Tapi
was a
untuk
shadow
pertama
choosing
kalinya,
his own path,
masa lalu
and that
tidak
night,
lagi mengikatnya.
he walked toward a
Ia adalah
future no
bayangan yang
longer
memilih
written by
jalannya
the
sendiri.
Syndicate.
Dan malam itu, ia berjalan menuju masa depan yang tidak lagi ditulis oleh Syndicate.